Imagine for a moment that you could travel through time, leaving behind the roar of engines and the constant flicker of digital screens to go back 4,000 years into the past. We find ourselves in ancient Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, where the dust of centuries has not yet covered the ambitions of men. In this setting of mud and stars, the first great story of humanity is born, a work that not only predates the Bible and the Iliad, but contains at its core the same anxieties that still keep us awake at night in the 21st century. I am speaking of the Epic of Gilgamesh, a tale carved into clay tablets that remained hidden beneath the desert sands for millennia until chance and archaeological curiosity returned them to the modern world. To understand the magnitude of what we are analyzing, we must place ourselves in the year 1872, when an engraver at the British Museum named George Smith deciphered a fragment of these tablets for the first time. Chronicles of the times say that Smith was so excited upon reading the account of a great flood that he began to remove his outer garments in the museum hall before the astonished gaze of his colleagues, and for good reason. He had found the echo of a voice speaking from the dawn of civilization, reminding us that the fear of death and the desire for transcendence are as old as the written word. This journey begins in the city of Uruk, a metropolis that at its peak represented the pinnacle of human ingenuity. Ruling there was Gilgamesh, a king whose nature was a theological enigma, for he possessed 2/3 divine essence and 1/3 human frailty. This unequal proportion is the key to his entire conflict. Gilgamesh was too powerful to be an ordinary man, yet too mortal to be a god. In the opening verses of the poem, we do not see the virtuous hero we might expect to find in a traditional myth. On the contrary, we are presented with an unbearable tyrant who exhausts his people, who claims the right of the first night, and who forces the young men to work without rest on the city walls. His energy is so overwhelming that the social structure of Uruk begins to crack under its weight. It is here that the narrative introduces a fascinating concept that modern psychologists would call the need for a mirror. The gods, hearing the complaints of the citizens, decide to create a counterpoint, a being capable of matching the king's strength and therefore humanizing him. Thus Enkidu is born. Enkidu is the pure representation of the state of nature. He lives with the animals, runs with the gazelles, and is completely unaware of the conventions of civilization. He is the noble savage thousands of years before Rousseau even imagined the concept. The way Enkidu is integrated into the world of men is one of the passages most charged with intimate and philosophical symbolism from antiquity. It is not war that civilizes him, but physical intimacy and culture. A priestess named Shamhat is sent to entice him, and after 6 days and 7 nights of connection, Enkidu discovers that he can no longer run with the wild beasts. His legs have grown slow, but his mind has awakened. He has lost animal innocence to gain human consciousness. This process tells us something profound about the Mesopotamian worldview, the idea that civilization is an irreversible process of loss and gain, where knowledge inevitably separates us from the blind harmony of nature. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu finally meet, the clash is monumental. They fight like titans in the streets of Uruk, tearing down doors and making the foundations of houses tremble. But at the height of the battle, something unexpected happens. Violence transforms into mutual recognition. Enkidu recognizes Gilgamesh's royalty, and Gilgamesh finds in Enkidu the brother he never had. This friendship is the emotional engine of the work. Together, they decide to embark on a mission to achieve eternal glory, challenging the guardian of the cedar forest, the fearsome Humbaba. Here, the poem enters the territory of the classical epic, but with a surprising layer of moral ambiguity. Is the defeat of Humbaba a heroic act or an act of ecological arrogance? By cutting down the sacred cedars to build monumental gates, Gilgamesh and Enkidu are committing a sin against nature in the name of progress and posterity. It is a debate that resonates with astonishing force in our era of climate crisis and resource exploitation. But fate, always fickle in ancient mythology, does not allow mortals to challenge the gods without paying a price. After rejecting the romantic advances of the goddess Ishtar with a series of insults that today we would consider a masterpiece of sarcastic rhetoric, Gilgamesh draws divine wrath upon himself. The bull of heaven is sent to destroy Uruk, and although the two friends manage to defeat it, the gods decree that one of them must die. The one chosen is Enkidu. The description of Enkidu's agony and death is one of the most heartbreaking moments in world literature. Gilgamesh watches as his friend fades away, as breath leaves the body that was once pure vitality. And it is in that precise instant that the hero breaks. He not only mourns the loss of his companion, but for the first time understands his own destiny. If Enkidu has died, he too will die. The shadow of mortality is cast over Gilgamesh, transforming him from a proud warrior into a desperate pilgrim. This inevitably leads us to another crucial aspect of the work, the shift in tone the story undergoes in its second half. Heroic action gives way to an existential quest. Gilgamesh discards his royal robes, dresses in animal skins, and wanders the steppe, questioning the meaning of life. His goal is no longer the glory of battle, but to find Utnapishtim, the only man who survived the flood and to whom the gods granted immortality. Gilgamesh's journey is a voyage to the limits of known reality. He crosses the mountains of Mashu, guarded by scorpion men, and traverses the waters of death in a frantic attempt to escape finitude. This part of the epic prefigures all the initiatory journeys of later literature, from the Odyssey to the Divine Comedy, reminding us that the human being is, by definition, a being that seeks what it cannot have. During his pilgrimage, Gilgamesh encounters a fascinating figure often ignored in quick summaries, the tavern keeper Siduri. She lives at the end of the world, and seeing the king haggard and covered in dust offers him the most sensible and, paradoxically, the most difficult advice to follow. Siduri tells him that the life he seeks he will never find, because when the gods created humanity, they destined death for men and kept eternal life for themselves. Her advice is simple: fill your belly, be merry day and night, celebrate feasts, bathe, look at the child who takes your hand, and make your wife happy. It is the philosophy of carpe diem, seize the day, expressed 3,000 years before Horus. But Gilgamesh is too obsessed with his fear to listen. His existential anxiety is so deep that he cannot settle for everyday joys. For him, life only has value if it is eternal, a perceptive error that many of us still make today by postponing our happiness in search of future goals that never truly satisfy us. Finally, Gilgamesh arrives before Utnapishtim. The encounter is a lesson in humility. The immortal old man tells him the story of the flood, a tale that holds astonishing parallels with the biblical Genesis, but with a fundamental difference. In the Mesopotamian version, the decision to destroy humanity stems from the whim of the gods, who cannot stand the noise men make and will not let them sleep. It is a vision of the cosmos much more chaotic and less moralistic than the Judeo-Christian one. Utnapishtim subjects Gilgamesh to a seemingly simple test of endurance. He must stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. The reasoning is implacable. If you cannot defeat sleep, which is the younger sister of death, how do you expect to defeat death itself? Gilgamesh fails almost instantly. He falls asleep and, upon waking, understands the futility of his quest. However, in a final gesture of compassion, Utnapishtim reveals the existence of a magic plant at the bottom of the ocean that restores youth. Gilgamesh retrieves it, proving once again his physical bravery, but on the way back to Uruk, the most ironic incident of the work occurs. While the king bathes in a pond, a snake slithers by and steals the plant. The animal sheds its skin and leaves rejuvenated, leaving Gilgamesh empty-handed. The snake keeps the prize and the man keeps his old age. This ending is brutally honest. It tells us that the secret of immortality is out there in nature, but that the human being, through carelessness or fate, always loses it. But to understand this fully, we must look at Gilgamesh's return to his city. Upon reaching the gates of Uruk, the king does not return defeated, but transformed. He invites the ferryman who accompanies him to gaze at the walls, the foundations, the orchards, and the temples. At that moment, Gilgamesh understands that his immortality does not reside in his biology but in his legacy. Uruk is his work, and that city will remain long after he has turned to dust. This is the great symbolic deconstruction of the epic, the transition from the individual ego to the collective contribution. Gilgamesh accepts his death and, in doing so, finally becomes the wise king his people needed. If we analyze the work from a deep psychological perspective, we see that Gilgamesh undergoes what Carl Jung would call the process of individuation. He begins as a being inflated by his own power, a shadow devouring everything in its path. Through Enkidu, he experiences the other and love. Through Enkidu's death, he faces the reality of trauma and loss. His journey to the end of the world is a descent into the unconscious, a search for answers in the depths of the psyche. The fact that he returns empty-handed of magical objects, but with a mind full of wisdom, is the sign of a maturity achieved through suffering. Enkidu, in this framework, is not just a side character. He is the wild and vital part that the civilized man must integrate to be complete. His death is necessary for Gilgamesh to stop being a capricious child and become a conscious man. The current relevance of the Epic of Gilgamesh is staggering. We live in an era obsessed with transhumanism, where scientists and Silicon Valley billionaires invest fortunes looking for the cure for aging. In a sense, technology is our modern Utnapishtim. We want to hack biology to live forever, often ignoring Siduri's advice. But Gilgamesh warns us that the obsession with not dying can rob us of the ability to live. If we were destined for eternity, what value would every kiss, every meal, or every sunset have? Finitude is what grants urgency and beauty to human existence. Gilgamesh's drama is the drama of the modern man who, surrounded by machines and glass walls, still fears the darkness of the forest as much as the first king of Mesopotamia did. Furthermore, the work speaks to us of the importance of narrative as a form of survival. Gilgamesh wrote his adventures on a stone stela upon returning to Uruk. That inscription is what has allowed us, thousands of years later, to be talking about him today. The true plant of youth is not a marine vegetable, it is language. As long as someone tells our story, as long as our ideas and our works continue to influence others, we will not have died entirely. This is cultural immortality, a concept the ancient Sumerians understood perfectly by placing such value on writing and the construction of monuments. From a narratological point of view, Gilgamesh establishes the foundations of what Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey. We have the call to adventure, the meeting with the mentor or ally, the trials, the descent into the underworld, and the return with the elixir. But unlike many modern stories where the hero gains a tangible victory, Gilgamesh gains a metaphysical one. His failure to achieve eternal life is his greatest success as a literary character because it places him at the same level as the reader. We are all Gilgamesh. We all have an Enkidu we have lost or fear losing. We are all walking toward our own walls of Uruk, hoping that what we have built will be enough to be remembered. This inevitably leads us to another crucial aspect, the role of the feminine in the work. Ancient texts are often criticized for their supposed patriarchy, but in Gilgamesh, women are the ones who pull the strings of fate and civilization. It is Shamhat who humanizes Enkidu. It is Gilgamesh's mother, the goddess Ninsun, who interprets his dreams and gives him spiritual guidance. It is Ishtar who triggers the conflict that leads to the hero's maturity. And it is Siduri who offers the deepest wisdom of the poem. Without the intervention of the feminine, Gilgamesh would still be a brute banging on the doors of Uruk. The epic recognizes that masculine strength needs the containment, seduction, and feminine wisdom to transform into culture. It is a balance of energies that is surprisingly modern in its execution. To fully understand this, we must look at the connection between memory and identity. Gilgamesh is terrified of being forgotten. In the ancient world, death was not a passage to a paradise full of clouds and harps, but a somber existence in the underworld, where souls ate dust and lived in darkness. Given that prospect, the only hope was to leave a name that resonated through the generations. Today, our way of managing memory has changed with social media and digital storage, but the underlying impulse is the same. We post photos, write blogs, and record videos in a desperate attempt to say, I was here, I existed, my life had meaning. Gilgamesh was the first to feel that need to leave a footprint in the mud, and his success is such that his name has outlived entire empires, from the Assyrians and Babylonians to the Persians, Greeks, and Romans, reaching us intact. The construction of the walls of Uruk, mentioned at the beginning and end of the poem, acts as a narrative frame symbolizing the triumph of will over chaos. The outside world is wild, full of monsters like Humbaba and capricious deities. The inner world of the city is the space of law, art, and coexistence. Gilgamesh learns that his duty is not to dominate nature, but to protect the space where men can be human. This message is vital in an era where we sometimes forget the importance of institutions and the social contracts that allow us to live together without destroying one another. The wall is not just stone and brick, it is the symbol of civilization itself, a collective effort that requires each individual to accept their limitations for the benefit of the group. Reflecting on the legacy of this work, we cannot help but see its shadow in all subsequent literature. The flood myth was absorbed by the Hebrew tradition. The relationship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu prefigures that of Achilles and Patroclus in the Iliad. Gilgamesh's sea voyage resonates in the adventures of Odysseus. Even in modern science fiction, where we explore the search for eternal life in the stars, we are rewriting the same verses that an anonymous scribe traced on wet clay in the 2nd millennium before Christ. The Epic of Gilgamesh is the genetic map of our narrative, the first serious attempt to answer the question of what it means to be human. As we approach the end of this analysis, it is impossible not to feel a deep connection with that king who lived so long ago. His fear is ours. His pain over the loss of a friend is ours. His search for meaning in an often silent universe is ours. The Epic of Gilgamesh teaches us that, although we cannot defeat biological death, we can defeat the void through love, friendship, and the creation of something that transcends us. We are not gods, and in that limitation lies our greatest beauty. We are beings capable of building walls so high they touch the sky, but we are also beings capable of crying over a lost plant and finding comfort in the gaze of a child or in the solidity of a well-placed stone. The story of Gilgamesh ends not with a shout of triumph, but with a look of recognition. As he observes his city, the hero finally rests. He no longer needs to chase shadows of immortality. He has found peace in the acceptance of his own story. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson we can draw from this millennial work. Life is not a race to reach a distant goal, but a process of returning home, to our own walls, carrying the wisdom of the journeys we have undertaken and the losses we have suffered. Gilgamesh returned to Uruk and wrote his story. In doing so, he became eternal in the only way that truly matters. His voice continues to resonate in every word we write, in every story we tell, and in every attempt we make to understand this fascinating and terrible mystery that is being alive. Through the centuries, Gilgamesh shakes our hand and reminds us that as long as there is someone willing to listen, no life truly ends. His epic is not just a vestige of the past, but an ever-present mirror where we can look at ourselves to find, among the cracks of our own mortality, the divine spark that drives us to keep building, to keep loving, and to keep narrating our own story in the clay of time. Thank you very much for joining me on this profound journey through the centuries to rediscover the first great story of our species, a tale that teaches us that the end of the road is always the beginning of true wisdom.